You want me to start?
Yes, Mata, you can start.
Thank you. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chiva Narotamam Devim Saraswati Vyasam Tato Jayamudret. Srinvatam Svagata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Hiridenta Slohya Padre Nevidnoja Sursatam. Nashta Presha Padre Shrinityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavat Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Neshtaki. We will be reading today Canto 4, Chapter 29, Text 5 and 6. Text 5. Udhim tu pramadam vidyam mamaham ityad kritam yam adishtaya deheyasmin uman punkte akshapir gunan. Synonyms: Buddhim, intelligence; to then pramadam, the young woman; Puranjani, vidyad, one should know; mama, my; aham, I; iti, das; yad kritam, done by intelligence; yam, which intelligence; adhishtaya, taking shelter of; dehe, in the body; asmin, this; uman, the living entity; punkte, suffers and enjoys; akshaphi, by the senses; gunan, the modes of material nature. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation. The great sage Narada continued. The word pramada mentioned in this regard refers to material intelligence or ignorance. It's to be understood as such. When one takes shelter of this kind of intelligence, he identifies himself with the material body, influenced by the material consciousness of I and mine. He begins to enjoy and suffer through his senses. Thus, living entity is entrapped. Purport. In material existence, so-called intelligence is actually ignorance. When intelligence is cleared up, it's called Buddhi Yoga. In other words, when intelligence is dovetailed with the desires of Krishna, it's called Buddhi Yoga or Bhakti Yoga. Therefore, in Bhagavad Gita 10.10, Krishna says, Tisham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purakam dadami buddhi yogam tadam yena mam upanchite. To those who are constantly devoted and worship me with love, I give the understanding by which they can come to me. Real intelligence means linking with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When this is done, the Supreme Personality of Godhead from within gives one the real intelligence by which one can return home back to Godhead. Intelligence in the material world is described in this verse as pramada because in material existence the living entity falsely claims things to be his. He thinks, I am the monarch of all I survey. This is ignorance. Actually, nothing belongs to him. Even the body and the senses do not belong to him, for they are given to him by the grace of the Lord to satisfy his different propensities through the material energy. Nothing actually belongs to the living entity, but he becomes mad after everything, claiming, this is mine, this is mine, this is mine. Janasya mohoyam aham mameti. This is called illusion. Nothing belongs to the living entity, but he claims that everything belongs to him. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu recommends that this false intelligence be purified. Cheto Darpana Marjanam. When the mirror of intelligence is polished, the real activities of the living entity begin. This means that when a person comes to the platform of Krishna consciousness, his real intelligence acts. At that time, he knows that everything belongs to Krishna and nothing belongs to him. As long as one thinks that everything belongs to him, he is in material consciousness. And when he knows perfectly that everything belongs to Krishna, he is in Krishna consciousness. Text 6. Sakhaya Indriyagana Jnanam Karma Chayat Kritam Sakhya-stad Vrityam Pranam Pancha Vritti Yatodraka. Sakhya, the male friends, Indriyagana, the senses, Jnanam, knowledge, Karma, activity, Cha, also, Yad Kritam, done by the senses, Sakhya, female friends, that of the senses, Vritaha, engagement, Prana life air, Pancha Vriti having 5 processes, Yadha like Urga the serpent. Translation. The 5 working senses and the 5 senses that acquire knowledge are all male friends of Puranjani. The living entity is assisted by these senses in acquiring knowledge and engaging in activity. The engagements of the senses are known as girlfriends, and the serpent, which was described as having 5 heads, is the life air acting within the 5 circulatory processes. Purport. Krishna Bahirmukha Hana Bhoga Vanchakare Nikatastha Maya Tare Japatyachare Prema Vivarta. Because of his desire to enjoy the material world, the living entity is stressed with the material gross and subtle bodies. Thus, he is given a chance to enjoy the senses. The senses are therefore the instruments for enjoying the material world. Consequently, the senses have been described as friends. Sometimes, because of too much sinful activity, the living entity does not get a material gross body, but hovers on the subtle platform. This is called ghostly life. Because of his not possessing a gross body, he creates a great deal of trouble in his subtle body. Thus, the presence of a ghost is horrible for those who are living in the gross body. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 15.10, Utkramantam shtam vapi punjanam va gunam vitam vimha nanupashinti pashinti jnana chakshushaha. The foolish cannot understand how a living entity can quit his body, nor can they understand what sort of body he enjoys under the spell of the modes of nature. But one whose eyes are trained in knowledge can see all this. Living entities are merged into the air of life, which acts in different ways for circulation. There is prana, apana, udana, vyana, and samana, and because the life air functions in this fivefold way, it's compared to the 5-hooded serpent. The soul passes through the Kundalini chakra like a serpent crawling on the ground. The life air is compared to Uraga, the serpent. Pancha vritti is the desire to satisfy the senses, attracted by 5 sense objects, namely form, taste, sound, smell, and touch. End of purport. Om Gyana-Timirandasya Nandana-Shalakaya Chakshurmilitamina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtavutale Shrimati Bhaktivinoda Swami Nityananda Namaste Saraswati Devi Guruvana Prachini Vishashriva Prachite Deshtrini Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasali Guru Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. I humbly bow down and seek blessings from everyone who assembled today, and thank you for the opportunity to read Srimad Bhagavatam for my own purification. I've selected a few points to summarize from lectures from Parampara. We are reading Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 4, Chapter 29, called Talks Between Narada and King Prachinaparhi. Narada Muni is explaining the purport of the allegorical story of King Pranjana. It's a very deep story, and only Narada Muni could explain all the intricate points. The intelligence of King Prachinaparhi was affected by too many fruitive activities, and he asked Narada Muni to explain what all the details of the story mean. In the text 5, the great sage Narada continued with explanation that material intelligence is ignorance. Intelligence has a broad spectrum of meanings. Intelligence, along with mind, helps human beings function, gives discriminating power. On the other hand, material intelligence is a type of ignorance because, as it's said here, it's influenced by the material consciousness focused on I and mind. As long as one's intelligence is thinking like that, no matter how much we discriminate and logically analyze things, ultimately it's illusory because one is thinking in terms of I and mine. People identify themselves with the body. They think I am the body. The body has senses. They are attracted to sense objects and focus on sense enjoyment and think this is my enjoyment. I'm the body and the material world is here for my enjoyment. That is the ultimate consciousness that comes out from Jiva in the material world. and one begins to enjoy using his senses. But this is not the only use of intelligence. If one comes to Sattva Guna, then one can distinguish, I'm not the body, I'm actually Atma, soul. A person in Tamaguna will think in terms of I and mine, but Sattva Guna teaches one that I'm not the body. In Sattva, we have some spiritual intelligence. When a person takes to bhakti, when one accepts the Supreme Lord, we call it faith. Spiritual intelligence is also there in everyone. One has to awaken it. The ability to accept the Supreme Lord in our position of service to the Lord, that is the function of the spiritual intelligence, not material intelligence that is affected by the gunas. So we have the intelligence that goes beyond the gunas of material world, and that what functions in bhakti. We have to make distinctions between the types of intelligence. So the way to understand it, material intelligence helps us to function and enjoy the gunas of material world. And that intelligence is divided in gunas themselves, Raja guna intelligence, Tama guna intelligence, and Sattva guna intelligence. In Tamaguna, one cannot distinguish much because it's ignorance. Intelligence means one can distinguish, but in Tamaguna, one is completely bewildered. People distinguish things in opposite ways. The white is black and black is white, and all the values are upside down. The intelligence in Tamaguna is very useless. Intelligence in Rajaguna is directed only to get a lot of self-enjoyment. Intelligence in Sattvaguna is superior to the rest. When one accepts the Lord and engages in service to the Lord, this is because of transcendental or spiritual intelligence. Only one on the path of bhakti is the truly intelligent person. The other types of intelligence only causes the bondage to the world. The only things that are non-material, if they are for Krishna. The proper use of intelligence is when intelligence is used for Krishna. In text 6, Narada Muni is talking about 10 male friends, 5 working senses and 5 senses that acquire knowledge, and their girlfriends, engagements of the senses, and 5-headed serpent for 5 circulatory processes. To male friends, 10 male friends, Jnana interest and Karma interest. Jnana interest to acquire knowledge about the world around us, sense of vision through eyes, smell by nose, taste by tongue, sound through ears, touch through skin, and Karma interest through legs, hands, and voice. Karma interest and Jnana interest combine together form a mechanism by which the individual living entity in this body is able to interact with the world outside. By Jnana Indriyas, one perceives the world around him. By the mind, he desires something. With the use of the intelligence, he activates the Karma Indriyas, senses of action, to fulfill those desires. And this is the way the chain goes on. Girlfriends of these male friends are desires. Each of these male friends have many girlfriends. Each of the senses have many desires. There are unlimited sensual desires that arise in material mind of living entity. They are very powerful because they have many engagements. Above the all sense objects of the world, there are sense desires. Above all the sense desires, there are the senses. Above the senses, there is the mind. Above the mind, there is intelligence. Above intelligence, there is the soul. And above the soul, there is the super soul. This is the mechanism that Lord Krishna created. We've heard about the wonderful description of the chariot of the body, where the chariot represents the gross body, the passenger represents the soul, and so on. The eyes are always after beautiful form. Ears want to hear beautiful melodies. Nose wants to smell nice fragrances. Tongue wants to taste palatable objects. Skin wants to touch something soft and pleasant to the touch. All the senses are seeking the contact with the sense objects. This way, material world becomes pleasant for material body. It's about contact between the senses and the sense objects, and the success in this struggle is called happiness. When a sense attains some pleasure, it's called happiness, and when that contact results in something unpleasant, then it is called distress. Material sense gratification is the source of misery. All sense pleasures of this world are very insignificant. The happiness that is coming out is temporary and never gives full satisfaction. But those with small mind always running after these, not realizing that this is source of suffering. The sense of hearing is roaming, looking for nice sounds. Mind is checking for pleasant or unpleasant. Intelligence can be taken away by senses. When our mind is concentrated on something, we don't notice things around us. If we get absorbed in a class or the darshan or some thought process in our mind, then we don't notice the roaring of the fan on the ceiling. If senses are there and the audible sound is there, the senses are perceiving it, but the mind is not focusing on it because the mind is focusing elsewhere. When we do our japa, we should focus our mind completely on sound vibration. So there could be a powerful urge to contact sense objects causes the destruction of living entity and his bondage in the cycle of the birth and death. 5 processes of contact senses with sense objects would cause death or destruction for different kind of living entities in material world. For example, the sense of sight, the eyes want to always see something nice and attractive. And Srila Prabhupada was giving the example of the moth. Moth moves towards the fire, finding it irresistibly attractive, not realizing that it's going towards death, rushes to the fire and dies. Ears want to hear something pleasant, and the example of a deer is given in Srimad Bhagavatam. A hunter plays melodious sound on the flute or other instrument. The deer is attracted by that sound, comes close to where the hunter is, gets intoxicated and mesmerized by that sound, becomes immobile, and becomes an easy prey for the hunter. For the sense of taste, a common example when a fisherman puts a worm on the hook at the end of string in the water, which is attractive for the fish, and fish is getting attracted and not realizing that the danger is there, opens mouth and tries to grab that worm, and at that time the fisherman pulls the rod out leading to the death for the fish. For the sense of smell, in Himalayas there is a musk deer from whose body is secreted a priceless chemical because its fragrance is used in various perfumes. The deer, not realizing that the fragrance is coming from its own body, rushes all over the forest, not finding the source of it, not realizing that he doesn't have to go anywhere, that the source is right there on its own body, but he runs all over the forest and dies from fatigue. Similarly, the sense of touch, the elephant is captured by the hunter by putting a temptation of female elephant, and in front of female elephant there is a big ditch covered by some grass not seen to the elephant, and being attracted by she elephant eager to have a touch, he elephant rushes forward towards his death in the ditch. This way, we see that the senses and the sense objects are pair combinations forming basis of existence in this world. And as much as these senses can be cause of our destruction, they can also be the cause of our salvation. Various senses should get focused on Krishna consciousness. Then these senses can become a path to perfection and to real happiness. And as much as senses otherwise engaged, they are causes of destruction. The eyes should be used to see the beautiful form of Krishna. That is why Srila Prabhupada emphasizes on having gorgeously decorated deities. When we come to ISKCON temples, we see beautiful deities and the mind is getting attracted. The eye is meant to have feast on a beautiful form of the Lord. When we see the deity of Lord Krishna, the eyes are getting perfectly engaged. The sense of taste is getting purified by tasting Krishna prasadam. Eating prasadam, one becomes free from the desire of eating all kind of food that should not be eaten. Also, the tongue should be used to glorify the Lord. If the propensity to speak about the things of the world is engaged in speaking about Krishna, then automatically the tongue is getting purified from the desires of talking about anything else but Krishna. Ultimately, when we focus all our senses on the Supreme Lord, one way or another, directly or indirectly, then the senses become purified. This is a wonderful process that Krishna has given us to engage the senses in Krishna's service. I will stop here. I apologize for any shortcomings during reading and summarizing. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripasindubhya eva cha patitanam pavanabhyo.